All right, we got a 2016 Grand Cherokee in here with a 3.2 liter engine. He took it to the dealer, and he actually brought it to me first, and it had like 20, 25 codes in it. And I told him I wasn't even really sure where to start with it because it had so many different codes, and they were all unrelated to each other. You had communication codes, transmission codes, engine codes, just all kinds of codes, different codes, steering module codes. And I just didn't really feel comfortable trying to tackle it because we could go down all kinds of rabbit holes with something like that. And anyway, I said take it to the dealer, let them diagnose it, see what they say. They came up with over $6,000 in repairs. The main repair that they found was the P0018, which it did have that when it came to me, crankshaft correlation. But that was only one of, like I said, many of them. And they wanted $2,400. And their solution for the P0018 would be to change all the 4 camshaft phasers and the oil control valves. And then they said the oil filter engine adapter was leaking, which was $670. It's pretty common on these. So they basically wanted $3,500. They said that would take care of all of his problems. Oh, they also said to flash the ECM. And this particular dealer charges $400 to flash the PCM, which is ridiculous, I think, in my opinion. I know it only takes 10 minutes. I actually flashed the PCM for him, and it was like $200. I think I paid like a $130 for subscriptions to FCA or whatever, and then whatever. But anyway, he had that work done, the all new phasers, the control valves, and not even a day goes by, and we got the P0018 back. But all the other codes with the ECM update and all that, all the other codes are pretty much gone. He does have a torque, implausible torque signal from the engine, and the P0018 still in it. So there's 2 things I know that can cause that. It could be on some of these now, the exhaust camshaft, the actual tone ring is starting to walk off a little bit on it, and that causes it to get out of time a little. Or there's 2 bolts underneath the phasers that can come loose and cause oil pressure problems. So either way, we have to take this bank 2 cylinder cover off, valve cover off. To do that, we got to remove this upper intake manifold. I do have a special tool that'll allow me to measure and see if the camshaft is, if that tone ring is walked or moved at all. And then we got to check those bolts. So either way, that valve cover has to come off. So I'm going to go ahead and take this upper intake off real quick and get down in, and then I'll show you that tool and what we're doing, and hopefully we can find something that could fix this problem. So I wouldn't say it's going to be a step-by-step on how to take this upper intake off, but I'm going to go ahead and remove it real quick and show you how quickly it can be done if you've done it before. I'm going to go ahead and pull this air intake loose, a couple 8 mils. I'm probably just going to take it off from right here too, just to get it out of the way. These things can and are a pain in the butt too. This whole box, I don't like this Mopar. I hate this boot they put on there on these. I'm gonna get a cat claw and I'm gonna go ahead and take this off. You don't really have to take this off. You could remove this upper intake and just kind of move it out of the way. But I'm gonna go ahead and take it off real quick. On these, it's not too bad. On some of the caravans and things like that, it gets pretty difficult to remove it just because of the space. There's a little stud back there that it kind of pushes into. And all it does is push into it, but I can tell you one thing, sometimes they can be stuck on there pretty good. All I'm doing right now is just kind of going through and disconnecting the purge valve and things like that. So we can take this off. So anyway, to get a cat claw and get this thing loose. Get this 8 mil loose back here. Goes to it goes to the throttle body. That kind of messed this boot up. I'm gonna get the cat claw real quick though, because I want to get this off without breaking it. All right, so all I'm doing is just taking cat claw and get underneath this and kind of pry this up. I don't want to break it. Get that out of the way. On these evap, you just push down on this center piece and then pull this out, and that can leave the rest of the other side on. So that's just off of there. You got the throttle body, TPS, and all that. Got these little red tabs. You just take a pick or whatever you have and pull those towards you, and then should be able to get push it down, and that release these clips. Some of them can be kind of a pain. You don't have too many wires you have to take loose. If you're just doing the upper intake, there's not a whole lot. You got a couple of vacuum lines back here. Yeah, just use a cat claw and kind of pry on them. This will come off pretty quick. And then this can be a big pain. This one's been off obviously recently, so it's not on there as well. But you have this, well, it stayed on there. There's a rubber grommet that pushes on a stud back there. The rubber grommet stayed on the stud. So you have that, and then you have this, and then there's a clip on the top that was broke off. So that's what holds that on. Plus the band for the throttle body. So on these manifolds, we have two 10mm nuts back here by the rear, or the driver's, or the bank one, and then there's a 13, I think it's a 13mm that goes in the cylinder head. We got to take those two out, and there's two 10s in the front here, and you can take those out, and then you can just pull this manifold off. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the tools for that, and then we'll pull this thing off. And you can kind of just get with anything. They're pretty easy to get to. My socket, or my ratchets, about dead. So on these Cherokees, they're pretty right out here in the open. Some of the cars, you know, the cowl goes over it a little more. It's a little hard to get to. I'm going to get a open end. There's a line harness and some EGR stuff that's kind of in the way for the maid bracket. So I find just getting the 13mm ratchet and open end is the easiest way to get those off. Take that bolt out, and then we got these two 10s, and you got the 7s, and then it's ready to come off. I'll go ahead and get a new battery for my ratchet and get that bolt out, and then we'll move to the front. Taking that 13mm bolt out for this bracket. Sometimes seems like on some of them you can just kind of loosen it and get it out of the way without taking it completely off. But on this one, I don't think you can. And the bad thing about this one is the wiring harness kind of gets in the way. Wants to block the removal of the actual bolts. You've got to kind of hold it away from the bolt to get it out. And I'll show you the bracket once I get it off. It's actually probably easier to just to get something to pry the harness out of the way a little bit lightly. You don't want to pry real hard, but you just need to pry a little bit to get the tension off of the harness here. Right, here's the bolt. I'm just going to leave the bracket down in there. It's got a wiring harness bolted to it. And then we got two 10s in the front here, and I don't think I can get my electric ratchet in there, so I'm going to go ahead and get a little 1/4-inch ratchet and unbolt those. Alright, I got those two nuts out in the front. We're going to go ahead and take these 8mm out. Holds the manifold to the lower manifold. I believe that's it. If I'm wrong, we'll find out quickly. Yeah. So on the front here, this is what I was talking about. You got the two studs with 10mm nuts on those. And the back side here, that bracket I was talking about, there's a stud here and a stud here. There's a bracket that goes down to the cylinder head. Take these two nuts off. And a lot of times you have to take the bracket off completely because it won't clear these studs to pull the manifold up. Once you get that up, you can go ahead and pull this heat thing off of there, heat foam off, and then we're going to go after this valve cover. Now this valve cover, the service data says you got to drain down the AC, recover it, and remove the AC line and all that. There's actually a way around that, and I'll show you how to do that, how I do it. I don't do that. I don't disturb the AC at all. And anyway, so we're going to set this aside, and then I'll go ahead and pull the coil packs and maybe the cam sensor and that stuff, and then we'll go from there on it. There's a 10mm bolt that holds this AC bracket or AC line to a bracket. I'm going to go ahead and take that loose. And the reason I do that is because I do kind of pull on these lines a little bit underneath. And I'll show you the setup I use underneath to get the reason why they want you to pull the lines and all that stuff apart is because those two brackets that come up to hold the upper intake on, there's bolts around under the valve covers. There's a bolt under the valve cover, and the valve cover won't clear with those real tight against there, so I take them loose completely. And I don't know why this thing's not. So I take them loose completely and off. I don't really take them out of the car, I just let them hang there loose. This stupid thing. Still in there. And that allows me enough room to get this valve cover out without disturbing the AC and all that stuff. This has 1234 on it, so if you know anything about that, you know it's pretty expensive to fill that back up. So these coils just have little connectors on them. Just push down on them, they come out. And then we got three 10mm bolts to hold the coils on. We'll go ahead and pull those out and move them off to the side. You do have this breather that goes to the valve cover. Just press down on the air box on this side right here. Just press down on that, and that comes out. And then this will come off pretty easily. And then what I'm going to do next, well, I'm going to take this cam sensor out. I was going to say, still got a few things up here we need to address before we go underneath. And this does have one of those gray locks. You just press that out, it comes out. And then we have the two phaser magnets in the front we got to take loose. Those are two connectors. Those come out. I leave those in. The service data says take them out, but you don't really have to do that if you're just going to pull the valve cover straight up. So I'm going to go ahead and take those two connectors off. And then we're going to go underneath and get these brackets off. Take the bolts out, and then we should be ready to pull all the bolts out and pull the valve cover up. So I'm going to get set up underneath, and then I'll come back. All right, this is the easier one to get to. This is towards the transmission side. You got this nut right here that holds that AC line on. 13 mil, we're going to take that out, and then the studs behind it, it's 13 mil. And this one's pretty easy to get to. And actually the service data says take off the cable converter too. I don't do that. Like I said, I don't remove any of this stuff, so I can show you how to do it, what tools I use. But I'm gonna go ahead and pull these off real quick. You're not gonna be able to see it because I can't get the camera in there and do it at the same time, but this one's pretty easy to get to. I'll show you what tools I use. I use a deep well 13 with a 3-inch, 1/4-inch socket, and a deep well 13. I just use a flex head 1/4-inch ratchet, and it's pretty easy. So this side's pretty easy. So I'll go ahead and get those out real quick, and then I'll show you what's going on with the other side. All right, so here's the other one, and you can tell it's pretty hard to get to. It's way up in there, right there, and I use the same setup that I use on the other side. It's a 1/4-inch. All right, so I'm just kind of taking both my arms, and I got one over by the cat, and then I got one kind of by the AC, and you can see I'm taking it loose, and I'm just kind of using my right hand to hold the socket and cranking on it. My hand's kind of over by the fan. My left hand's kind of by the fan, cranking it off. I'm just showing you this just to show you that it is possible to take it off without doing the cat and all that, taking the cat off and all that. Getting it back in can be a little time consuming, but you can do it. I've done it several times on these engines. Usually it cooperates pretty decently for you. These bolts are kind of long and tedious, but this is how I take them out. So I just wanted to show you that real quick, show you that it's possible. All right, so I went ahead and got all the 8mm around the valve cover. You do have to take off your cam sensor off the rear there because that holds it in, the actual holds the valve cover in. And I will say that the cam sensors were switched around between the two to make sure that the code did not move over to the other side. It did not. So I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but that was checked. The cam sensors were checked, which usually on the P0018, I've hardly ever seen a cam sensor causing that code. So now it's up. This one's pretty much up and ready to come out. You will have various wire looms you got to push in or detach from it, etc. But anyway, that's how the valve cover comes off. But again, this really isn't a step-by-step on how to take the valve cover off for the intake manifold or anything. I'm just kind of tearing it down, then we're going to see what's caused this P0018, hopefully. All right, so I think we found the problem here. I'm going to show you these tools. This is the tool that we have that we can test these camshafts. You got the two little pins and the strings and the tool. What you do is you put the engine up at top dead center, and on the bank 2, the P0018, you have the two arrows on the phasers, and they have to face each other. And then on the other side, if you're checking the other side, the two long dashes would face each other. The arrows would be outward. But since we're checking this side, which is the bank 2, the one facing forward, the two arrows had to meet up here, and then the dashes are on the outside. Like I said, opposite of the other side. So we have it lined up. The two arrows are lined up. You use a bolt, turn the engine counterclockwise till you get these two to line up. And then technically, what should happen is this tool goes into where the camshaft sensor's usually at, and these two go into the holes that are in the tool. And if the camshaft, if this piece right here, the towing ring, hasn't walked at all, they should go in to the holes and line up. And this one is off probably, if I had to guess, a couple degrees. It's not much, but this bottom one, the exhaust cam, for whatever reason, it seems like it's the exhaust cam that always walks on these, will not go in the hole. It's off like maybe 3 or 4 or 5 millimeters, and it just won't go in the hole. With this thing, with this one lined up, and it's flush here in where the cam sensor is supposed to be, and this should slip right in the hole. See, because you have a hole in the back of the camshaft right here, and that should line up with the hole in the tool, and then this should slip right through there and line it up. And if it slips through there and it's locked in, then your camshaft didn't walk, and you don't. That's not the reason for your P0018. But since this one will not line up, this tone ring actually moves on this camshaft over time, whatever. It's got 145,000 or something like that. And it's actually moved on the camshaft there, and that's what's causing the P0018. So this exhaust cam is just a few degrees off of where it should be. And here are those two bolts I was telling you about earlier that come loose and will cause the same code. There's a bolt here and a bolt there. I'm trying to get the light in there. There's a bolt here and a bolt here. I think they're 13 millimeter. And if those come loose, and they do come loose, it'll cause oil pressure issues, and you can get the same code. And since I'm going to take this camshaft out anyway to replace it, I'll go ahead and take those bolts out and make sure, maybe put a little bit of thread locker on and make sure they're tight. So they can come loose over time for whatever reason. I don't know how tight these are. It's hard to kind of get anything in there with the phasers on. You can usually get something on there though to kind of see if it's, well, it's pretty loose. It's not super loose, but it didn't take much to knock it loose. So definitely going to tighten those up, but I don't think that's our problem because the tool does not line up with this exhaust cam. And each tool, if you look at it, it'll say right bank and left bank, and it says which way to face forward. So this just goes in there, and like I said, the camshaft should line up with these holes. It's kind of a chintzy tool. When they first came out, they were over $300, and now you can get them. I got them on Mopar Essentials, I believe. They were like 130, 140, something like that. So they're kind of expensive just to check your camshaft. But I don't know any other way to do that other than if you had another exhaust camshaft laying around that you could check it with and just kind of see. You would not get exact reading on it, but you get kind of eyeball and see kind of close. That's kind of a, I don't know who's going to have an exhaust camshaft laying around, and then you know, it's not going to be super accurate. So this is really the only way I know to check to see if those tone rings actually walk on the camshafts, is to use the tool and then make sure they line up. So this one does not line up. It won't go through the hole. It's literally off maybe 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters, and that kind of makes sense because the code, if you clear out the codes and get it out of limp mode, it'll actually run okay for a little bit. It's kind of hit and miss. Sometimes it'll run okay for 5 miles, and then you start it up the next time and it goes right into limp mode. Sometimes it'll go into limp mode 2 or 3 times in a row, clear it out, and then it'll run fine for 10 miles, and then it always comes back, but it's not like a code that comes back right away every time. Sometimes it takes a little bit to come back, so I don't know. Like I said, it's not off very much, so I don't know when the computer checks it to see what the criteria is to set that code, but it's off just enough to cause the issue and for the computer to catch it once in a while, but it's not off a lot to where it's just setting that hard code right away when you start it. So that's what we're going to do on this. So I'm going to go ahead and order a camshaft for it. Hopefully they got them in stock, and then we'll put this on. This is also a good time to check your roller rockers and stuff if you have them off. A lot of these have, this engine's not clattering, so I don't think we have a problem with that. But if you have a 3.6 or a 3.2 that's clattering, you got misfires. That's another real common thing on these engines, is the rockers under here. Since we're going to have the cam off anyway, it'd be a good time to do it, but there's no noise on this engine, so we're not going to worry about that now. So anyway, I guess I'm going to go get a camshaft, and then you do need, on this side, you need the special tools to take the phasers off. You might be able to kind of get away with it without it, but the special tools are pretty cheap, because you have to trip this, on this side you have to trip the tensioner to get the phasers off. On the other side, you don't really have to do that. You don't really need special tools on the other side, because all the tension's on this side. And anyway, so I do have the tools for that. So we'll trip that, get this off, get this phaser off, remove this camshaft, and then go from there. And then hopefully we can get this thing fixed and get these codes out of here. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get one of those local from the Mopar dealer, and then well, let's pick it back up, I guess. I'll show you how to use the tools, and we'll change this camshaft out real quick. All right, I'm not sure how well the camera's going to pick this up, but I got that pin in here, and it's down. If you look at the camshaft from over by the ECM here, it's down about the 2:30 position, not quite the 3 o'clock position. And if you look at the hole up here, we're at about the 1 o'clock position. So it's literally off. See, the hole's right here. So it's literally off maybe a few degrees at the most. And, you know, it's supposed to be down about the 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock position, 2:30, somewhere in there. It's actually about the 1 o'clock on this. So it hasn't moved much, but it's just enough to set the code and for the tool not to line up. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out real quick. All right, so I went ahead and got the camshaft. That's the part number in case you're looking. I think that's actually an older part number. They have a new updated one. I'm going to go ahead and slap it in there. I'm not going to show that. And then we'll test it by putting that tool back on it and seeing if the tool lines up right. All right, so I got the cam installed. Like I said before, this isn't going to be a cam installation video. These are 89 inch-pound. If you do this, always use good assembly lube, and you know, put them around the lobes and where the bearing caps go. So anyway, I put the camshaft in, and you can see there that the tool actually lines up now. Goes through the hole over here and the hole over there. So even though it was only off maybe a couple degrees, it was just enough to throw that code and cause chaos. So now that's all back installed, and that tool is lining up perfectly now. It goes through both sides. So we know that that's good now, and we can start putting the valve cover back on. So I'm going to go ahead and do all that. I'm not going to show any of that. And then we'll just come back and clear the codes and drive it and see what happens. And I'll let you know once we get this all back together what happens. All right, I just drove it about 20 miles or so. I took on the highway and stuff. You can see here actual exhaust cam 2 and desired and actual 129 and 129. Back before this happened, or when we had the problem with the camshaft, it was off about, if the desire was 120, it was usually like 250 or 300. And you can see here that it's perfect. They're perfectly lined up where they should be. So the car's fixed. So I'm not really worried about that. Everything's good. Like I said before, you know, you're gonna have to get that tool to make sure you got it 100%, you know, lined up. If it's, you know, unless you got a camshaft laying around that you can kind of eyeball it with, even that wouldn't be that accurate, because the 2 cams that we had, you know, it wasn't off that much, so it could throw you off a little bit. It's best to get that tool. I got my tool from Mopar Essentials. It was like 130. A lot of places want like 300 or 350 for it. I wouldn't pay that much for it. I think it's called Mopar Essentials or something like that. If I can find the link, I'll send it to you. Anyway, that's where I got. It was $130, and that's really the only way that I know of to check to make sure that tone ring has slipped or whatever, or walked away from where it's supposed to be. You also get a implausible torque signal on the transmission. I got that too. I think it's a P0. I don't even want to speculate. I'll put that in the title and let you know. But those two seem like they go hand in hand with this issue with the camshaft. So anyway, that's it. Like I said, I know it's not really a step by step video on how to change the camera or anything like that. But somebody's coming. Anyway, I know it's not a step-by-step video on how to change the cam and remove the intake and all that, but I just wanted to show you. Unfortunately, the dealership told him he needed phasers and all that stuff, and he had it done, and it still didn't fix it. And they were going to charge $3,600, change the phasers and the oil cooler and all that. And anyway, and he's back to square one, the exact same problem. So, and the dealership should know better. I'm sure they've seen this problem before. This isn't like a super common thing on these, but from the research I've done and my experience, that this does happen. And they should have never told him. They should have just gave him the possibility that it could be the camshaft. You know, of course, they would just change all the camshaft. Who knows what they would do? But anyway, and he had steering torque sensor codes, a few other things, and that was covered under TSB for an ECM update. I went ahead and updated that before I did this job, just to make sure it wasn't something weird like that. even though the 0018 wasn't in the TSB. He had a couple other codes that were in the TSB. So I just wanted to kind of cover my bases. So I went ahead and reprogrammed, flashed the ECM for him, updated everything. And anyway, I did the P0018 came back right away even after I did that. So that wasn't the issue. So anyway, that's it for this one. If you got the P0018, the transmission code, that's definitely something to look at. That and those 2 bolts by the phasers, make sure those are tight. So anyway, thanks for watching. As always, God bless.